All right, we are on part 3 of romantic relationships. We're going to talk about the elevator model of relational escalation and de-escalation. So basically what this is this is how we build and form relationships and how we end relationships. Technically, you can use it for friendships. I think your book might even give some examples of it through friendships, but it's going to resonate with you more if we talk about it with romantic relationships, okay? So I know with me in the way, you're not going to be able to see all of it, but I'm going to read it through. I'm letting y'all see the notes page underneath. I'm going to leave it right here on this screen because that's going to help you take notes. You want to write down what you see on there because that's going to help you on your final exam for which stage. If there's a question like, oh, they do this and this, or, what stage are they in? So we're going to look at the arrow. We're going to start at the bottom of the arrow and work our way up. Something I want y'all to keep in mind is we can stop at any of these stages. And I know you know that if you think about it, but, just keep that in mind. We don't get to bonding with everyone, right? So just keep that in mind. That's why it's called the elevator model, but I'll go over that a little bit more at the end. So let's start from the beginning. Again, we're starting from the bottom and working our way up. Follow the arrow, initiating. So that's where you observe that person and maybe introduce yourself. You observe that person. Again, when we say observe, it's not in a creepy way. You observe that person and maybe introduce yourself. Easy enough, right? Think of like the very first contact you have, or maybe not even contact if you just observe them. Then we move on to experimenting. Sorry, y'all, I don't even know what you can hear, but the birds are going crazy. But it's kind of nice outside, so I have the door open. So if you can hear the birds, I apologize. Okay, now we move on to experimenting. Experimenting includes like the first conversations that you have. You talk about what you have in common, and you ask and answer questions. Okay, you ask and answer questions. So the first conversations go in experimenting. Okay. Then we move to intensifying. So intensifying, as it says, we have more in-depth conversation, minimal physical contact, you spend more time together, and shared personal information increases. Okay. So y'all, the way that I always tell my students to think about intensifying is think about when you're newly dating. Think about when you're newly dating. So it's, there's more in-depth conversations. You're done with like, so do you have any siblings? We're not getting to the skeletons in our closet yet, but it's, it's a little bit less formal, but it's still formal. Minimal physical contact. Maybe, it's still not assumed that maybe you kiss each other goodnight at the end of the night, but maybe when you first see each other, you're not giving each other a kiss, or, you're not at the point yet where you're just automatically touching like you would if you were in a more established relationship. Spend more time together. So again, think of like newly dating. There's still kind of that formality. It's not assumed that you're hanging out, that you're spending the weekend together. It might still be that formality of like, hey, are you free Saturday night? Can we hang out? Okay. So that might help you to think about intensifying as far as kind of where it is with the gray area. All right. We're going up. Sorry. Integrating. So a deep commitment has formed. This one's kind of long. A deep commitment has formed. There's a strong sense that the relationship has its own identity. Partners think of themselves as a pair, not just you and me. People are likely to expect to see them together. You spend more time together. There's more physical touch, and we see personalized language. Okay? So I know that's kind of a lot. I'm not going to stop so that, if y'all need more time, you can rewind this, or not rewind it. You know what I mean? Go back and get all of them. But integrating, obviously, we're getting more serious, right? So personalized language. I brought up personalized language. What does that mean? Well, it can mean several things. It's kind of not that you have your own language in a relationship, but you kind of do in a way. So personalized language can include inside jokes. It can include like pet names like babe, cupcake. I don't know. Do people use cupcake? I would judge a couple if they called each other cupcake. Whatever. So, kind of those pet names. And it can even include, I hate to call it baby talk, but like that little voice that you use with them, that little cutesy voice. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Okay. So that's what personalized language is. All right. And then we get to the stage of bonding. So in bonding, communication is highly personalized, and partners provide primary confirmation of each other's self-concept, and an announcement of a formal commitment is made. Okay? So partners providing primary confirmation of each other's self-concept. I'm looking, if you can see my eyes gazing down, I'm looking at my notes. That is basically, it's not that you don't know who you are without them. It can look like, if you're having a bad day, they remind you of the qualities about you when you've forgotten, right? So I want you to think about, and I know you can't answer because I'm talking to myself essentially, but I want you to think about where would, let's say you have a family wedding. Where would inviting them as your date to meet your entire family fall? What stage? What stage do you think moving in belongs in? What about, what stage do you think, I don't know, giving them a key to your place? So they're not moving in, but they have a key to your place. So hopefully you were actually thinking of where you put that. And the answer is there is no answer. There is no stage where those definite things happen, because for different people, they might be in different stages. It depends on where you think that those happen. And that's important because that can help you with future relationships. Maybe your partner wants to move in together and you're not there yet, but you don't know why. Maybe because you put it in a different stage than they do. And that's okay. And I know I say this a lot, but I don't expect y'all to get your notes out and be like, all right, on the count of 3, let's point to what stage we think we're in. Like, no. But that can help you realize, like, listen, I just see it somewhere else in a relationship. It has nothing to do with you, but I kind of plot that, further into a relationship. Okay? All right. So now, no offense, we're going to break up. Okay, so let me get my notes. All right, stages of relational de-escalation. So these are how relationships dissolve. First one is differentiating. Okay, there's increased conflict, a tense communication climate. Partners begin to see their differences as annoying. Okay, so all of a sudden, them leaving their dirty clothes on the floor, whether you live together or whether you stay over at each other's place or just come over to hang out. When you're newly dating, you're like, oh, it's so cute. He just or she just puts it wherever it goes. And now you're like, get your shit off the floor. Okay. So that's differentiating. Next is circumscribing. So communication and physical contact decrease, and partners spend less time together. Okay? Something I want you to keep in mind is all of these are at a level of, or what am I trying to say? These are when it's different than the status quo. Okay? So when I say communication and physical contact decrease, that means decrease from what it normally is. If you weren't a very touchy-feely couple to begin with, then that might not look super different, but it still changes, okay? Then is stagnation. Stagnation is kind of an interesting one to talk about. So stagnating is where you're going through the motions of an intimate relationship, but you do so without commitment or joy, okay? And then the next part of that is the relationship stops growing. So what I mean by going through the motions, and hopefully y'all are reflecting on this stuff as we go through it. I know I say that a lot too, but hopefully you are thinking about this. Just because there's no drama and huge things happening. When I say going through the motions, that's not, if you're just at a good place, that's okay. That doesn't mean you're in stagnation. Stagnation, is without commitment or joy. Okay. So you stop growing. You're going through the motions in a bad way. I always think about, and this is sad, I don't mean to make light of it, but maybe, I think of the couple that stays together for the kids. Maybe you say bye and I love you and give each other a kiss just so the kids can see you do that. Okay. But you don't mean it. So stagnating is very, very common, and relationships stay stagnant for long periods of time, as it says there in the notes. Okay. Why do you think that is? Well, change is scary, right? Even if you are, and that's why it can take so long to maybe end a relationship with someone. Even it's comfortable. Even if you're not relatively happy, it's like, yeah, but I'm not miserable enough. What if the next thing is worse than this? Like, that can be scary. And sometimes you don't realize you're stagnating. I remember with my ex, now that I look back, I'm like, yeah, we were in stagnation for a long time. But at the time, it can be hard to notice too. So that's another reason why relationships stay in this stage for so long, is because it can be hard to realize that you're just going through the motions. Okay. And again, I want to emphasize, I'm not saying, and your book isn't saying, that there should be a ton of drama in a relationship to keep it exciting, to keep it, no. Sometimes there's beauty in we're just cruising, but stagnation is cruising, but in a bad way. Okay. Avoiding. So decreased interaction, increased emotional, psychological, and physical distance. Partners may now define their lives more as individuals and less as a couple. Okay. So again, there's a lot of distance, both physically, emotionally, psychologically. So that might look like, this happens kind of a lot. You hear of a lot of couples that, whether they were dating, married, it doesn't matter. If they live together, they stop sleeping in the same bed. It could even be, you had a bad day. You would usually go to your romantic partner to talk about it, but you just don't bother anymore. You're like, I'll tell my friend. You've kind of stopped investing, and you really are decreasing that interaction, both quality and quantity. Also, when we say partners may define their lives more as individuals and less as a couple, maybe, if you've been together for a long time and your partner is like, oh, what are we doing Friday night? And you're like, well, I'm having a poker night with my friends. I don't know what you're doing. Maybe you make your own plans. Maybe it's that, again, think about the word avoiding. There's a lot that isn't happening. Okay. And then the next step is terminating, where we actually terminate the relationship. So partners make a decision to minimize or eliminate further interpersonal interaction. So the reason we say minimize or eliminate is because it might, if there's kids involved, or I don't know, people have custody battles over pets, you might need to interact with them technically. But so this is where we terminate the relationship. And then division of property, assets, custody, etc. would occur in this stage. Okay. So, that is the elevator model. Something I want you to keep in mind is it's called the elevator model because you can go up and down. I think a lot of couples might go through differentiating, but you can work your way up to bonding. Now, technically, you can't, and I didn't say this before, you can't skip a step, especially in escalation. So even in relational escalation, you can get to bonding in 3 months. Or you can be dating someone, even married, which would be sad, but there are couples out there where they've been together for 5 years and they might be at integrating. Okay? So there's no timeline for these. You can't skip steps unless you have gone down the elevator model and then worked your way back up. There are couples, I remember there was a girl that I went to high school with, her parents fully got a divorce and then they got back together, got remarried. Yes, you can't technically unknow someone, but technically you can't skip steps. Even if you go from initiating to intensifying in the same night, you can't skip steps. Okay? So that is the fun elevator model. Students usually love this. It can answer a lot of questions for past relationships. And we will continue with part 4 here in a bit.